I've written 2 books on the tyrannical side of left-wing activism, on how a number of murderous dictatorships are established on hatred, censorship, bigotry and violence, and of how those same characteristics are returning with a vengeance. But the event that proved the catalyst for those studies was the funeral of Margaret Thatcher. The rioting mobs who descended on that event to boo and to spew hate. Now, many people disliked Thatcher, and that's fine. But there are certain lines that you do not cross in a civilised society. Whatever you think of Thatcher, she had family and loved ones, people who were crushed and mourning. And you don't interrupt their grief with your own repellent behaviour. It was simply inconceivable to me that people who regard themselves as holding the moral high ground could behave in such a repulsive manner. But there's a direct causal link. Some people believe that they're so virtuous and their opponents so vile that they can break every moral code going. It empowers them to behave atrociously. They don't act appallingly despite believing in their moral superiority. They do it because of it. This brings us to Rush Limbaugh. Now, I have to make a confession here. I'm not American, so I've never heard of Rush Limbaugh. I know nothing about him. But his critics have been keen on advertising his flaws. They've dredged up 6 comments which they've repeated ad nauseum. Now, I might suggest that if all you can get is 6 off-colour remarks in a 40-year career, then it doesn't amount to a hell of a lot. But I can't judge those comments. They may have been attempts at humour, at ruffling the feathers of our self-appointed, self-righteous champions of justice. Or they might be evidence of real character flaws. Removed from context as they are, it's impossible for me to tell. But what is still clear is this. Elements of the left demand that they be treated with complete deference, while they treat everyone else with unbridled contempt. Limbaugh has his defenders as well, though. Many of them have championed his stance on freedom of speech, and they've highlighted his remarkable generosity and his determination to not advertise that generosity. No virtue signalling here. But his critics say he gloated when people died. Again, I can't comment on that. But I can say that if you think it's repulsive behaviour to gloat when someone dies, then you absolutely cannot justify doing the same thing yourself. But this too seems a common flaw on the far left. They also have a tendency to defend their actions by saying that the people they hate, those they regard as scum, do the same things. Well, if that behaviour makes your opponent scum, and if you do the same thing, then it means that you're scum as well. And there are few things worse than gloating and abusing the dead, when a victim's loved ones and relatives are mourning and vulnerable. Especially if those grieving family members become aware of the behaviour. Whatever you think of Rush Limbaugh, his family did nothing. So you don't gloat, because you're going to upset and offend vulnerable and completely innocent people. It's okay though, because Twitter bans hateful and abusive posts, right? I mean, they couldn't possibly justify banning people on the right while turning a blind eye to those on the left, could they? I don't have much to say on what happened that day. I think it's best to let left-wing Twitter speak for itself, and you can be the judge. But remember, this is the merest snapshot of the avalanche of hate and bile that saturated Twitter that day, with not a single comment deleted and not one poster banned. And you can make up your own mind about that too.